kind of sit back and you see the vibes that come from that music. See Russ in the background say, hey, I can see what he's saying. Look, give us our money. We do. Got something to do to us. Oh, gosh. But Les, thanks for coming on the show today. Russ Meek Speaks show, just trying to tell people what's going on, knowledge is needed, and try to help people to say, understand what's going on and how you utilize the information and knowledge that's around. So you're the expert that is in the area of family law, or the whole format of what happens with weddings, marriage, divorce, all the different things in the world. So tell me, I just went through divorce.
If I wasn't representing you, you may have.
Oh, gosh. So tell me, Liz, how did you get into this business?
Well, I got into the business because a personal family friend was going through a hard time and they couldn't find someone that was sensitive to their needs. And I helped them get through it.
Okay.
And found that I had a little niche there because I practice as a therapeutic lawyer.
Therapeutic lawyer?
Yeah, I don't mind doing a little hand holding.
Okay.
You know, you remember the days when you would go to maybe the entertainment center, amusement park, and you would go through this dark tunnel in a little boat and you just couldn't wait to see the light. You were anxious in the dark tunnel,
okay,
but you needed to get to the light, and then when you saw the light, you felt a whole lot better.
Got it. Now, you from Chicago originally?
I'm from Chicago, yes.
Okay. Where'd you go to high school?
Went to Calumet High School.
Calumet? Oh.
Yes, yes.
Now, you play football or what?
I played 1 year. I wasn't particularly good.
Okay.
The coach told me I should be coaching rather than playing. So,
so coach said, maybe we should take a little break here. You don't need to get the stuff done.
But I tried.
Okay. Hey, all we can do is me. I'm still trying to finish up on the golf side.
Yeah.
My brothers both went to play football at U of I and basketball. I'm like, look, I'm not going there. I'm going to play on the chess team and I'll be playing some golf. So I'll take that out. But what got you into this area of law? I mean, what school did you go to?
I went to Oberlin College in Ohio, and then on to Case Western Reserve University, also in Cleveland, Ohio, that area. And then I went there for law school.
Okay.
And then came back home and decided, you know, I would practice law here in Illinois.
Got it.
And learned a little bit of a variety of law, you know, business law, corporate law, you know, personal injury. And then over a few years emerged as a family lawyer, a divorce and custody lawyer.
Now, let me make it clear. A lot of people are hearing this word family law. Exactly what is family law?
Family law deals with issues involving divorce, custody, visitation, child support, paternity.
Okay.
Those are the areas that we focus on mostly. You know, if you really think about the family law attorney, that's the attorney that fully understands your finances. You expose your, you know, your business, taxation. You're dealing with your children, dealing with your spouse. So they know more about you than the average lawyer would know about their client.
Okay. That's a format that you focus on. That's the practice. And right now, family law is an issue that we all experience. So right now, from my memory, we're looking at a divorce ratio right now for everybody that gets married today. About 52% of them are going to get divorced. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So why are we getting married?
Because love draws us in.
Love? Wait a minute. Oh, gosh, I tried to tell that to my mom when I got married to my last ex-wife, and she got upset with me because I said, look, Mom, I'm going to have to get a prenup. What are you talking about? God does not want a prenup. I said, Mom, wait a minute, I get divorced, and you're going to be taking all my money. I said, look, I tell you, God does not want you to have no prenup agreement. Why would a mother say that?
Well, generally, if you are young, you can go into a marriage hoping to build some wealth, and along with your dreams as well. But if you have acquired wealth, then you might want a little added layer of protection just in case.
Okay. So you're saying that the prenup is something that people should at least think about before they take that step?
Well, if you're unequally yoked, and I'm sure your mother could relate to that,
okay,
then perhaps you should take care of your business before you enter into a relationship. we find oftentimes African American women tend to be higher, more educated than their male partners. And what happens is that when it comes down to she's making $200,000 and he makes $55,000, they have a perfectly good marriage until it sours. Then she has to pay him maintenance, formerly known as alimony, here in the state of Illinois. And that doesn't go over very well. It's fine if she takes from him, but at the point where that he has to be the recipient, that doesn't go well with her at all. But that happens from time to time.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand the format. I thought we got married, we say I do, we commit to this marriage for life. That was the concept that I had to say, look, I never have to worry. I make my commitment here, and it's a contract where we cannot part. Death do we part is the only thing that can separate what's taking place.
Well, I have to put out a disclaimer. I've been married nearly 40 years.
Okay.
And so I believe in marriage. I believe in the institution of marriage, and I don't promote divorce because divorce symbolizes marital failure. So, you know, I never want to be a failure. But people who try and give it 100% and find that, you know, circumstances dictate otherwise, you know, they have to go through this process. And often they need someone who's sensitive, someone who understands the law, someone who can sort of hold their hand through this process. And sometimes you have to see the mortician. You don't want to see him, but you have to see him. And sometimes you have to see the divorce lawyer as well.
Because I sit back with a lot of clients, a lot of money in their pockets. And right now, the issue is, what's going to happen with my money? I mean, I had some clients that are physicians. They make millions of dollars a year. And right now, multiple houses. And I say, okay, the wife doesn't work. And he's been the breadwinner for years. And he said, well, I'm getting my fair share. Well, what's your fair share? Did you earn any of this? No, I was there in the marriage. I supported this guy through thick and thin, so I'm entitled. And I come back to say, well, yeah, I think she should have something. Did you guys have agreement at least in front to say if something went wrong, this is what will take place?
Well, most people don't take out an insurance on life, on their lives. They take out insurance that's payable upon their death.
Okay.
And so we don't know what's going to happen from time to time. I mean, he could have made some money, he could have lost some money. And that's the risk that we all take in life. However, when you have committed to a marital relationship for many years and one party supported the other party, it did not work, maybe because of choice or maybe it was something that was agreed upon, what happens when we're dividing assets at the end of the day and also taking on debt as well, because it's not just all assets. Sometimes couples are heavily in debt, and you have to make a division of who's going to assume what debt. But let's say you've been very successful, and now this marriage is coming to an end. The children have gone on to college, and you find we don't have very much in common anymore. The kids are gone, they're grown, they're out of the house. It's just the two of us. And in many instances, when COVID came along, people found, oh, I'm stuck with this person that I don't particularly enjoy spending time with.
I got to go.
And so I got more calls at that time than ever before. But nonetheless, I think that when you're separating assets, and if this person has invested in you, your career, and has been there, been supportive, you know, do you leave them high and dry, particularly if you are the primary wage earner? Do you leave them high and dry and tell them figure it out on your own? No, courts equitably divide the assets that the parties have accumulated during the time of marriage. So for instance, if in fact you've accumulated some assets prior to marriage, that's off the table.
Okay.
If you've inherited some wealth, that's off the table. But anything that you created or that you acquired during the time you were married, that's maritable, and that's all on the table.
Okay. Now, the question, I've asked Oprah, let's get married. So Oprah's like, okay, you know, look, I got a little money here. Stetman's still around, so I don't know if I can pick you now to get married. So Oprah's like, well, let's think about this. We have to negotiate a contract here. But in situations like that, where you have someone that has substantial wealth and you're getting into a marriage situation, you expect, I'm going to have some type of prenup agreement to make sure that nobody gets things that are out of line?
Well, prenups are easier said than done.
Okay.
Because the concept of protecting your assets going into a new marriage with someone who may not have equal assets sounds good. However, presenting that to that person sometimes creates a challenge. And I've had people to present that prenup, the concept, too soon, and I've had people to present that too late. Well, you definitely don't want to present it when all the guests have been invited and the wedding is next week.
Okay.
That's not going to work because it requires that other spouse to have it looked over by an attorney, so they're independent eyes. That person has to be fully aware of what your assets are, as well as they have to disclose theirs. So it's about full disclosure of what you got. And sometimes people don't want people to know all that they have. So oftentimes people say, oh, I'm going to get a prenup. But sometimes the person that you've committed to, that you say you love, isn't as willing to sign off on that.
Got it. Today, though, we have a lot of people knowing divorce is definitely inevitable. And the format is, what do you do? Do you need to have a family law counseling session before you get married?
Let's look at it this way. We plan for birthdays.
Okay.
We plan for anniversaries. We plan for funerals. I say we should plan for marriage and sometimes marital failure as well. So it wouldn't be a bad idea to sit down with an attorney before you get married and say, hey, I love this person. I want to make a commitment to this person. If in fact it does not work, how does this work? What happens?
Yeah, because typically before I could sit down, I got to sit down and talk with the pastor, say, hey, let's make sure they were equally yoked. And why can't we also add to that agreement a conversation of, let's talk about our financial scenario and the actual legal scenario?
Yeah, well, I think, premarital counseling is always good because you want the marriage to work. And most people, at least in the African American community, go into it fully committed. Most people. I think it's not necessarily a business transaction. They love each other. And there are times when love goes wrong and you're just stuck with the circumstances.
Okay.
What do you do under those conditions? You protect yourself and you protect your future and you protect your children.
Because you're at war. There's a war going on.
Well, I wouldn't call it war. I would call it love gone wrong.
Oh, gone wrong, okay. Again, I see machine guns going over the place like, hey.
Well, that's because people can escalate this. I mean, if you think about this, you're fighting over your greatest commodity, your children sometimes.
Right.
Anybody who is married and has children, often dreams of, hearing those feet, run to greet you at the door when you come in. And when you go through a divorce, that's not going to happen anymore. That child's not going to be at the door to greet you. You might get every other weekend. You might get, Wednesday night dinner. So all of this changes. And so this is not what you really thought it was going to be. You thought you'd be there every day. You thought you'd be there to see that child go off to school, return home, cook dinner for that child every day and be there. And circumstances dictate otherwise.
It's kind of weird because I went through this process where I have a 14-year-old daughter right now, expected to be with her every day of her life. Of course, it's a scenario now going through the divorce. It's a change where I now get limited access. Of course, I will give her anything that I can and try to educate her to different things in terms of family, history, things of that nature. But it's a different world now. And I'm trying to say, don't we need to set this up from a legislative, legal standpoint where children have some impact? Are they going to allow a divorce to take place? Shouldn't they have some rights?
Well, I often represent children when their parents are going through divorce. I'm appointed by the courts, by the judges to do so. And in many instances, that's to give a child a voice. Sometimes, children are too young to really be able to articulate how they feel and the circumstances that surround them. However, when a child has the ability to weigh in, I'm interested in that child's perspective. For example, I'll have a child come in and they'll say, Mom, I'll say, Mom, how's he doing? And she says, oh, he's fine. He's perfectly fine. And then when I meet with the child and close the door and say, hey, you know, I'm representing you in the court battle between your mom and dad. And the kid says, oh, you don't know how I feel. This has just broken my heart. This is the most difficult thing in the world. And it happened a few years ago where I asked the kid right around this time, you know, it's Christmas time. I said, hey, what do you want for Christmas? What do you want Santa to bring you? He said, I don't want anything this year. And I said, that's strange. I said, really? You don't want anything? 7 or 8 years old? And I said, well, Santa's got to bring you something. And he said, well, maybe one thing. And I said, well, what's that? And he said, I'd like Santa to make my mother and father be nice to each other. Well, just be nice to each other.
Okay.
So he wasn't asking for the world. He just said, I just want a little peace. Yeah. Right?
That wasn't too much, hey.
Hey, peace on earth, goodwill, right? You know? So, but in his mind, and when you're 7 or 8 years old and you're powerless to basically weigh in on this, and the fight is about you, and instead of you feeling secure, you have to pack your little book bag and put all your things in a suitcase and go over to the other parent's house, and you have to do this over and over again. Can you imagine if you were an adult and that's what you had to do? And I had that in one instance where the parents had to move out of the house back and forth, and the kid was stationary.
It's like, hey, you guys got to go kiss here.
Yeah. And you know, I mean, then one would leave dirty dishes in the house for the other one, and you know, those kinds of things. A lot of childlike behavior, and oftentimes when I'm representing children, I ask them, do you feel like the adult in the room? And they seem more like the children. Say, yes. They understand that.
Yeah, because it's weird. I went through a divorce scenario with my child, not wanting her to feel like she's been left alone. I said, look, I don't care what you want. Here's my assets. Take anything you want. Take care of my child. That was kind of my focus. I didn't say, hey, I'm keeping all my stuff, leave me alone. I'm gonna get the best attorney. We're gonna leave this thing alone. No, that was not my focus. How can I keep my child happy? Because thinking when I was a child, my parents went through divorce also. It's like not a very good experience because it's a scenario where you get two people in your life that you thought you'd be with all of your life, and they're separated. And now you don't know how it's gonna work.
It's a difficult challenge, and it's interesting that you would say, share that your parents were divorced and had gone through a divorce, because oftentimes we all experience traumas during our lives, and sometimes if your life is like, you know, a straight and narrow path, then, you know, more than likely you'll probably turn out to be a good citizen. But if you have some traumas along the line, then, you know, you're going to have some challenges in a marriage. So if you can imagine, the ideal situation would be two people that are on that straight line there. But what if you have two people who've had traumas, family traumas, ups and downs, marital failure, problems involving, you know, fathers that may have been abusive or things along those lines? Then, you know, that's going to be a challenge for you to go through a successful marriage.
Yeah, like I said, it's a thing that happens on a daily basis. And for me, my focus is always on the kids. To say, look, they're going to have the biggest impact from this situation to take place.
Well, I often tell children, if you don't unload your suitcase with all the problems that your parents have had, then you'll take those into your own marriage. And more than likely, your marriage will not be successful. So I recommend therapy, intervention for children. You know, a lot of times in other communities, as soon as they know they're going to go through a divorce, they immediately put their children in some kind of setting for some intervention. We, on the other hand, you know, say, hey, they'll be fine. And the children are not fine. They're the collateral damage of their parents' divorce.
Got it. Now, interesting scenario. I deal with a lot of different racial groups. What have you seen to be the difference between African American, Jewish community, and Caucasian community in general, and Hispanics in terms of divorce?
Well, a couple of things. First, you're dealing with a shortage of good African American males. males. There's a male shortage.
We're all locked up.
Yeah, well, I mean, for whatever reason, men are not as good men are not as accessible to African American women. For instance, your daughter could go to Spelman and get her degree, and she is very successful in the business world, but can't find companionship that's compatible, versus someone who could have been incarcerated for 5 years, and he gets out, and he's got 2 honeys on his arm in 3 months, and they want to pay his rent, right?
Okay.
So, you know, we're dealing with that issue. We're also dealing with the fact that, you know, we're a very conservative community when it comes to marriage. And so a lot of times, you know, for religious reasons, people, you know, stay in too long. And so they try and make it work because they believe, you know, God has ordained marriage as an institution. And so they basically have to deal with those kinds of things. Then the most important factor that I've run into is mental health.
Okay.
And dealing with the fact that African American men particularly are adverse to counseling. We do not want to go to counseling. We'll go to the barbershop and we'll ask them how I should handle this situation. But he's got the same problems that you have, probably more, right? Mm-hmm. But we do not support the whole notion of mental health intervention. And some of us have some severe issues that need to be addressed from our childhood in order to be effective parents and spouses.
Unfortunately, it's a major issue, especially on the mental side. I do a lot of work with the penal system that we have here, trying to get our thousands of African American males that are locked up on an average of $26,000 a year to keep them incarcerated. And biggest issues we have is the mental issues that they have to deal with.
Yeah, but it's also an economic issue as well, because children where one parent is incarcerated, there's no child support coming into the household, right? Right. So can you imagine 3 children born from this marriage or this relationship, and mom is doing the best she can, and instead of having an economic partnership that should be established, he's asking her to send money on the books for prison, right? Right. So money's coming out of the household, going to the penal system. Not very much. I'm not accentuating that, but I'm just saying there's nothing coming into the household. And so she suffers as a result of that, and the children no doubt suffer as well.
Yeah, because I now have 4 kids. I got 1 locked up and the 3 that are here.
That's right, that's right. And so this has a huge impact on economic wealth in our communities, because 2 people who could have bought a home together, now she's still renting when, you know, she earns a decent salary, but it's just not enough to support herself and 3 kids without his assistance.
And the issue of economic wealth. The impact of divorce and things of that nature on the families is substantial. Right now, I look at possibly, we're talking about the hundreds of thousands of dollars that are impacting these families from a divorce situation.
It's devastating. I like to describe divorce as economic suicide. What it does to black wealth in our community is quite, you know, troubling, because what you see is 2 people struggling, working to get something, only for that to be divided in half and to start all over again. Versus, you know, 2 people that have struggled through their marital problems. I mean, people who've been married 30, 40, 50 years, you know, have had all kinds of problems and challenges. But, you know, when you go to an anniversary and they say, oh, they've been married for 60 years, and you say, wow, you know, that's amazing. Yes. But, you know, they did. Yeah. And they stuck together. And now you have people that can't stay together 60 months. It's different. It's
a challenge. What's the recommendations from you, sir, to say, how can we make this change?
Nobody has touched the board since you guys
Well,
started.
I think that what you have to do is, you know, I would say premarital counseling is good, but okay. I've often shared with some of the clergy that are anxious to see people, going down the aisle. Sometimes what you have to do is post-marital counseling. Help them get through the first year. Help them kind of like reshape themselves so that there's a fit.
Okay.
Because, that's the greatest challenge, If you can sort of, smoothen off some of those rough edges during the first year or two, and, ministers who are anxious to just say, hey, I now pronounce you man and wife, help them through the first couple of years and counsel them then when they need the counseling. I think that would be something that would be a value that would be added to help marriages sustain themselves. The divorces that I've done, probably 1,500 that I've been involved in over my career, I would say 25% of those marriages could have been and should have been saved.
Okay.
But you have to have the willingness to put that time in and work at it. And because I'm such a strong proponent of marriage and believe that it is an eternal commitment. But, those people who aren't willing to invest that capital into that are not going to get the yield that they truly desire.
Got it. Because like you, I thought that my endeavor was a lifelong commitment. And it's like, hey, it cannot be separated. But it does happen where sometimes it has to end.
Yes, and sometimes it's best because children who see a dysfunctional family, a marriage that is totally dysfunctional, where two people grit their teeth, hate being in the same space, cannot get along under any circumstances, creates a lot of anxiety and tension for children. And they carry that into their marriages, their relationships, unresolved conflict, constantly at each other, So these are things that children do not need to see as models. You talk about marriage, but you also have to talk about that 50% of the children in the African American community are born outside of marriage,
okay,
out of wedlock. And so you can't ignore that population because now we have a different vocabulary that we use. This isn't my husband, this is my baby daddy or my other baby's daddy. And so now we're dealing with terms that we've never dealt with before until recently, that sometimes, and ask yourself, how many weddings have you been invited to in the last 5 or 10 years versus how many children you've known to come into the world? Mm-hmm. So this is something where, you would meet someone at the, maybe at the church social or the ice cream, social, or something along those lines, maybe at a wedding or a funeral or a family reunion or something like that, you meet someone. Now people meet at the club and they hook up, they conceive a child.
Got it.
And it's akin to building a house without a foundation. And what does that mean? When the storms of life come, there's nothing that grounds them. And so they don't know each other. There's no big mama in the family that they both respect, right?
Got it.
So he hasn't met her family. She hasn't met his family. It's just been a relationship of intimacy, but no real foundational strengths to sustain them through a relationship. So those create more strife because at least in marriage, you stand up in front of a few people and say, I do, and at least I'm gonna try real hard, right? But when you don't have that, and it's just that, I don't really know this person, and I definitely don't like this person, but we're stuck here for at least 18 years.
Okay. I look at my life to say, would I ever get married again? It's a challenge just to say, hey, I meet some nice young ladies, and thinking it would be great to spend a lot more time, but I'm saying, I'm scared here because I'm not looking to say I do and have this canceled because I don't have a way to stop it.
Well, I don't think you should be so pessimistic about future love, because when love comes, it comes, and you generally know it when you feel it or you see it. Someone special may come along and may want to make a commitment to you and you to them. And God bless that. That's what life is about, finding some happiness with someone that you love. However, there are times that you might find yourself with someone that you wake up and say, this is a monster. I made a big mistake. And how do you sort of back out of that and deal with that without creating the least amount of harm, perhaps to children first and then to yourself?
So can't we just like live together for a while? Isn't that a better way to do it?
Well, you know, that has its flaws, and I'll give you an example. Let's say 1950, someone comes up here from Mississippi to Chicago. He's got a family there. He's got a wife and 2 children. He's supposed to send for them. And then he sees the big city lights, and he finds someone special here in Chicago. Works at the post office for 30 years. Never connects with his wife, but he lives with this woman. And he dies. What happens to his assets?
Well, assets are going back to the spouse.
To the spouse. So to live with someone and not be married to them, sometimes it's a bad investment. Just from a business standpoint. I'm not dealing with morality, I'm just dealing with business in this instance. You know, it could be a bad deal because she's going to get the pension. The wife is getting the pension. Right. The girlfriend, they may have even bought a house together. And if they didn't buy it in joint tenancy, you know, then the wife may end up getting a portion of that house, right? Right. So sometimes from an economic standpoint, from a business perspective, that could be a bad investment. Society recognizes marriage.
Yeah. Now, here's another issue these days. I'm dealing with clients who happen to be homosexual, things of that nature right now. I'm trying to let them know that legislation hasn't set up yet to give them complete connectivity. The assets that you guys are acquiring together can be set up so you don't have to worry about the assets being taken apart. But right now, it's not the law yet where you'll get the automatic transition if you guys commit yourselves together. And they're now allowing to be married, so.
Yeah, I mean, marriage under any circumstances is recognized, legally recognized.
Okay. So right now, these folks that may be on that side or thinking about it and are gay and saying, okay, we're going to get married, you can do it.
Yes, it's legal in the state of Illinois and in most states. But the whole notion about being legally married, whether you're heterosexual or homosexual, is you have rights that you don't have if you're not married to the person.
Okay. And this crazy thing with the issue of marriage, then comes the kids. So I have some cases right now with some clients who happen to be homosexual females, and they now had a child, and now it's the issue, who's going to get rights to this child? Well, the child was born by one of the girls, one of the females, but they both want joint custody, and they're trying to battle, say who has the rights. Again, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't say what's going to take place.
Well, some of these things are complicated, can become complicated. You know, I remember having a case where a couple had brought a child into the world, and there was an issue. They weren't married, but it was a gay couple, and you know, it was a huge fight. You know, the law has changed in many ways. I mean, we refined the law to protect the rights of parents under those circumstances, and children as well. But you know, there's a lot of definition that still needs to be given to the circumstances. This is an evolving kind of process. It's relatively new in terms of the law, but you know, there's clarity is coming as we speak.
And that's the need for having some consultation with family law.
Absolutely, because there are things that you can do to basically secure the rights of both parents under those circumstances if you do that up front. Okay. And everything is in writing and everything is clearly defined. But if you leave it chance, then that could be problematic.
Again, it's an issue where I try to recommend people to always deal with knowledgeable people like yourself that says, hey, we can help you talk this matter through, make sure that it makes sense and it's legally sound.
Sure. I mean, so much work has gone into this area and body of the law. You don't have to walk into this blindly anymore.
Now, you've written a book on this subject. What's that title again?
It's called The African American Guide to Divorce.
Oh,
and drama.
Now, am I going to get a signed scenario here with this book?
it's dated a little bit, but you know, it still has a ton of information that can help African American families deal with this whole notion of marital breakup. There are a lot of books written about how to find the perfect person, how to fall in love, but this is the first comprehensive book in the African American community that deals with how to break up without breaking down.
How do I break up?
Well, breakup is painful, but you know.
But it's going to cost me.
It's going to cost you either way.
Oh.
But how do you break up in a way that you don't destroy who you are? And how do you rebound from a breakup? And we offer several anecdotal, ways of dealing with breaking up without falling apart, without losing your dignity and who you are, and how to rebuild the image of who you are. I mean, oftentimes you take things for granted. For instance, you know, let's say friends invited you over to the 4th of July barbecue, you and your wife.
Okay.
But you two are no longer a couple. So what do? You know, do they invite you? Do they invite her?
He was my friend first.
Well, this is what we call friendship capital, right? You know, and so they just decide, well, it might be awkward, so let's not invite either of them.
Okay.
So then we're dealing with friendship isolation, right? And so what if they invite both of you just to be fair, but you bring your new honey along with you? Well, that creates tension, and everybody at the barbecue is like, oh, we know what's on the grill this year, right? So the bottom line is, you know, we have to deal with those issues. Where, you know, for instance, if you go to church and the two of you were members of the same congregation,
okay,
and let's say it's not a large congregation because one could stay in the balcony and one could be on the ground floor, but let's say you're there and you're wondering, okay, I came to this church first. She should leave. And so, you know, there are oftentimes fights about those kinds of things as well. You know, it's like, you know.
You hear the crowd up in the balcony. Oh, what's this little scattering going up there? What's happening? Kind of reminds me of my church, Second Baptist Church, was started from ruckus that took place. The black folks in the balcony where they had to sit started getting too loud, and one guy fell off the balcony into the crowd.
Oh, wow.
So the folks of First Baptist, which was the white congregation, said, look, we're going to buy you guys a church, and you can call it Second Baptist Church. This is actually a great article in the New York Times about that. Happened in Evanston, and those are things that happen up in the balcony, so you never know what's going to take place.
You never know what's going to happen in the balcony.
Yeah, and it's the weird stuff. But with your area, it's been a challenge. I mean, this has to impact you in a lot of cases. You're trying to see what's good, what's not, what's right or wrong. I mean, have you dealt with this?
You know, sometimes I struggle through issues. There's never a day where there's a dull moment. But, you know, I often ask God for wisdom to guide me, you know, because sometimes people are dependent on you to get them from point A to point Z. Okay. And they are looking to you and your counsel, because part of the job is not just being an attorney, but it's also being a counselor to people. People ask questions all the time. How should I handle this, and what should I do under these circumstances? And I'm challenged by this, so I want to do this, I want to do the right thing. I want him to have a relationship with his children. Oftentimes, I'll give you an example, you might find that choosing the wrong attorney could be detrimental to you.
Big time.
Because if in fact you have someone that says, well, to a mother, I got you child support, I got you the house, I got you the car, I got you the bank accounts. But the mother looks and says, but you destroyed the relationship between that man, that black man, and his children. Mm-hmm. That's not what I wanted. I wanted him to have a relationship with them. I wanted him to be a father in their lives. And too often we see that where sometimes African American fathers are marginalized, right, as a result of going through a divorce. They decide, you know what, you divorce me, I'm divorcing the children, I see him when I eat him, and he checks out.
Yeah. And that's a big problem I see, at least in the African American community. We have a lot of challenges. And right now, one of the biggest challenges is going through a divorce situation.
Yes.
And unfortunately, it only seems to be getting larger and larger.
But I think that there are some ways that we can work together to break up without breaking down and recreate who we are. Because if you go through this process and you have children, they need to see that, okay, it didn't work out between mom and dad, but they respect each other. They work together. They make sure I get to my activities. They make sure that, you know, holidays are pleasant for me. You know, maybe one year I'll be with dad for Christmas. Next year I'll be with mom and the family and her family. And we work this out in a way that it's less stressful for the children. Because if you can imagine somebody pulling you and saying, this is where you got to be, this is what you're going to do, you know, nope, we're not doing that this week, we're not doing that this month. You know, it's very stressful for children.
Very. And the kids don't know that. Look, they don't have any rights. I can't make this change.
Yeah, they're powerless.
Right.
And so, you know, what happens is that children, you know, sometimes say, I did not want that to happen, or I didn't feel that way, but my mother told me, or my father suggested that I expressed myself this way. You know, it gets complicated because if you come into a setting where you basically a step parent and the role of a step parent and how that plays out. And so some of the challenges that you face just dealing with that. You know, children are powerless and they're in very awkward positions because, you know, dad wants to take you to his girlfriend's house. And you're like, this isn't my mom. And the girlfriend doesn't want you there anyway because, you know, she's interested in your dad, not you. So children are often put in very difficult positions.
Yeah, and that's, again, for me, the biggest issue is the child. And for me, I always focus on what's going to be the best thing for the child. And you roll from there. But one, we flew through all the time here, sir, and I can't believe that we're coming to the end of the session. So can we keep you for another hour?
Unfortunately, I've got another appointment.
Oh my gosh! Oh, not
but I'll come back.
Oh, hey, we can set this up again because there's a wealth of knowledge that you can provide to a lot of people saying, look, I've been listening to this people for the last hour here. They got a lot of data I need to learn. How can I get? Can we like get on the internet and talk with this guy? By the way, how do they contact you? What's the best way to do that?
You can always go to my website, Barclay Law Group in Chicago, and you can always reach out to me. Our office is on 35th and King Drive, 3525 South King Drive. Phone number is 312-553-0123, or you can email me at lbarclay@barclaylawgroup.com.
Okay, now, am I going to have billable hours when I call you on the phone?
You may.
Oh, gosh, I just called.
But it will be worth it.
Okay, so you're saying, look, it's worth the dime.
It's worth the dime.
Okay, so it's an interesting world. What is the final perspective from Attorney Barclay? What does it say? What's going to happen here in this world of family law?
This world is evolving day in